So I spent Sunday afternoon typing and trying to summarize Dad, and by the evening I thought I'd done a reasonable job of it. But then on Sunday night I had a dream, and for some reason in this dream I was required to drive a gigantic 18-wheel truck, and I kept bumping into things. I bumped into signs, I bumped into lampposts, I even bumped into someone's brick porch. I was just bumping into everything, so I guess that means I wasn't as confident in reality as I thought I was. And then yesterday, seeing all the people who came here to honor him, I began to understand that the dream meant that the job was a little bigger than I had imagined it was. But Dad made it relatively easy because he was one of the least overtly sentimental men I've ever known, and that continued until the very end. Even on Friday evening, he wasn't complaining. Was he warm enough? Of course. Was he thirsty? No, don't you see there's water right over there? Are you comfortable? Yeah, just a little wiped out. And the nurse came in and said, can we get some blood? And Dad said, good luck. So I told him I brought a book in case he got boring, and he said, yeah, I get boring pretty quickly these days. So then he dozed off, and I put my hand on his, because, you know, that's what you're supposed to do, I figured. And he woke up at one point. He looked over and he noticed that. He didn't say anything about it, but he had this expression on his face that said what he was feeling clear as a bell. And what he was clearly feeling was, whatever. But that was Dad, and as I've tried to do this fatherhood thing, I remembered a lot more about how he did it than I did when I was in my 20s. Like when he relentlessly made me learn my times tables in 3rd grade, and all those other things that have had devastating impacts on Zach and Sean's afternoons and evenings. And I don't know how he had the time and energy to do all of the things that he did. I mean, I think, you remember when he had us into cross-country skiing? I mean, I keep thinking, how the heck am I going to find time to get my kids into cross-country skiing? There's just no way. You know, he kept up with our schooling, taught us all those things, was involved with scouting, built a badly abused above-ground pool. Do you remember that room-sized train table that folded up against the wall on hinges and folded back down? You know. And to truly know Dad, you had to visit our campsite, known as insiders as the land. A patch of woods when he bought it, what, 33 years ago maybe? You know, he carved a road into it, and he built all manner of platforms, outhouses, sheds, a solar-powered battery system and water pumping system, just an amazing Robinson Crusoe-esque tour de force of tradition and technology. And that's kind of the physical manifestation of Dad, the father, and the engineer. You know, he saw problems, and he saw resources, and he saw solutions. And sometimes he saw them with a frightening clarity, sometimes an intimidating clarity, and it sometimes came off as kind of my way or the highway. But the more I think about it, you know, he saw the landscape. He saw the drainage issues in the highway. He saw what the bed of the highway looked like in ways that you didn't. And he really didn't have the inclination or sometimes the ability to explain to you what he saw. And riding the Dad highway wasn't always smooth. You know, we all had our little bumps. I mean, I remember when I was a kid and he thought I used a spoon too much at the table. And there was a long war over whether you eat with a spoon or a fork. And to me, it was the difference between freedom and tyranny. And I sneaked spoons to the table. I hid spoons. I taped them under the table. I did everything I could to use a spoon to get those morsels of food in my mouth. And to him, it was mutiny on the bounty too. So it was serious. And we all had our experiences of that kind. But you know, when we did something really stupid, like the time when I burned out the custom van's engine in the middle of the West Virginia highway by doing like 99 on the knobby hills down there. You know, he was very forgiving of those kinds of mistakes, very quick to let those things go. And you know, in later years, he'd grumble a bit at the need to, say, build a new transportation system for Sue to get into and out of a house, but he always played his part. And I joked a few times about the Christmas CD he made one year. You know, it was all your typical Christmas footage. Everybody around the tree, grandkids unwrapping presents, hugs and kisses, and he put it all to the tune of the Simon and Garfunkel song, I Am a Rock, which is no doubt a great song, but not the typical expression of Christmas glee. And for years, really for years, I've been trying to figure out that Christmas CD, that Christmas video. And just this last week, it really occurred to me, based on something you said, Mom, that you know, he was saying something, maybe unconsciously, maybe consciously, that he couldn't say with words. You know, he was maybe saying that he was the rock on which the other stuff was built. Yeah, and you know, it's cliche, but you know, a rock feels no pain, an island never cries, all that stuff. And even the last week, when the rock was clearly feeling some pain, it wasn't crying. But early Saturday morning, I did see a tear on his face, and I stared at that tear trying to figure that out. But I don't know whether it fell from you onto him, Mom, or not. It may have. So outwardly, he treated the last few years and its challenges like everything else, like a problem that could be and needed to be solved. And Mom gave everything she had to shore him up. And she pushed the rock up the hill until nobody could have pushed it any better or harder or further. And she doesn't have to look back and say, I should have or could have done this, because she did it all. And we got 2 extra Christmases. When he told me a few weeks ago that in 2012 he took no sick days, he wasn't bragging, it was just very matter of fact, didn't take any sick days last year. I called him crazy. And last week he went to work, though he could barely get back from the car. Mom was obviously distraught about that. But, you know, he would have really hated to be unable. And if he'd been hospitalized for any length of time, he would have, you know, charmed the nurses with his gruff charm that he had. And he would have been glad, but a little embarrassed at our visits to him. He always seemed a little embarrassed that we had to visit him in the hospital. And he would have gotten really sick of network TV. But this wasn't the kind of, you know, death that you think is okay. It really wasn't. We all felt a deep sense of the unfairness of this. He was too young, he had too much left to give. And there were too many things now that we're going to have to try to figure out without him. And we're going to keep feeling that way for a long time. But the rock isn't gone, it's below the surface a little bit. And thanks, Dad, we love you. And I'd like to invite Zach to sing a little song.
Go to sleep.